In today's video, we're going to continue our season preview series where we're doing a season preview for all 31 NHL teams. Today's team we're focusing on is the Philadelphia Flyers, and that's coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned off the top, today we're going to continue our season preview series and we're covering the Philadelphia Flyers for the upcoming 18-19 season. In case you missed our other video in this series, we're basically cutting this up into 4 segments. The first segment, we're going to review the results from last year, do a deep dive into some of their statistics. We're going to take a look at some additions and subtractions of the roster from last year compared to this year. Third segment, we're going to take a look at the expected lineup that they're going to be putting on the ice for opening night. And then fourthly, I'll give you my thoughts and predictions on where I think they're going to finish and how they'll do for the upcoming year. So let's get started here and take a look at the 17-18 season results. Now, as we know, the Philadelphia Flyers had a reasonably successful season. They finished 3rd in the Metropolitan Division. They had a record of 42, 26, and 14 for 98 points, clinched a playoff berth, but unfortunately came up short in the first round against the Pittsburgh Penguins. So overall, it was a reasonably successful year for the Flyers. They clinched a playoff berth. They battled the Pittsburgh Penguins in the first round, ultimately came up short, losing the series 4-2. Even though they did lose that series, they had a great performance out of center iceman Sean Couturier. Obviously, it was a bit of a breakout year for him, really elevating his game, and that'll hopefully go a long ways to helping the Flyers take things up a notch here as they move forward. Flyers ended up scoring 251 goals last year. It was actually a pretty decent result, putting them 13th best in the NHL. They ended up giving up 243 goals against, which wasn't too bad either, puts them in 16th place, so pretty much in the middle of the pack, giving them a total goal differential of +8. Even though they had a reasonably successful year last year, I think one of the key things here is to cut down on those goals against. If they can get some solid, more consistent goaltending, which is something this team has been craving for some time, obviously that'll go a long way to help them take themselves up to be closer to being a Stanley Cup contender. Now let's jump over here and take a look at their special teams results. Obviously, as we know, special teams quite often play a big role in the overall team success. Their power play was reasonably successful last year, finishing with a 20.7% and putting them 15th in the league. So obviously, kind of middle of the pack. Would be nice to get a better result, but certainly nothing to be too disappointed in. Obviously, the power play was one of their stronger points of their game last year, and it was significantly better than their PK, which we'll jump into here next. Their penalty kill was only 75.8%, which put them 29th best in the NHL. That's certainly a major area of focus going into the 18-19 season. Obviously will help cut down on the goals against as well. I do think the fact that they allowed so many power play goals was a big reason why they didn't have more success last year. Obviously a big part of that is goaltending and defense as well. If they can cut down on power play goals against, that's going to obviously directly lead to fewer overall goals against, improve their penalty killing, and I think it would help the team quite a bit to take it up here a notch for the 18-19 season. A big part of their success last year is a lot of their top guys performed like top guys and had excellent seasons. I mean, we saw Claude Giroux surpass 100 points. Sean Couturier really stepped up last year as well, really breaking out in an offensive role, playing that first-line center role most of the year, as well as really a great year for Couturier. Obviously, Jacob Voracek certainly performed rather well. They got Shane Gostisbehere and Ivan Provorov on the back end. Those two guys looked like they're really going to be studs for this team for a long time on the blue line. So all 5 of those guys were really crucial in leading this team into the right direction last year. Even guys like Travis Konechny had a pretty good year. Wayne Simmonds wasn't no slouch either. Unfortunately, Simmonds did miss a little bit of time due to injuries. Numbers were down a little bit. But overall, I don't think Simmonds had a bad year, and I certainly expect him to bounce back, especially where he's going to be looking for a new contract. So I do expect good things out of Wayne Simmonds for the 18-19 season as well. When you deep dive into these team stats, here's a few other things that I found interesting. One of them was when they score first. When the Flyers scored first last year, they had a record of 23, 6, and 6. Obviously, scoring first was huge for the Flyers team last year. They quite often, when they scored first, were able to hang on and win the game. When the Flyers were leading after one period of play, they finished with a record of 12, 1, and 5. Leading after 2 periods, they had a record of 29, 1, and 5. So obviously the Flyers held on to win majority of their games when they had a lead after the first or second period. So obviously that's crucial as well. Obviously they didn't have too many blown leads last year, which can certainly come back to bite you. When you got teams that often score early but give up more late and end up losing the lead, that's obviously not a good thing at all. So the fact that the Flyers could often go into the 3rd period with a lead and hang on to win showed that they could really buckle down and play better defensively when it mattered most. Now let's take a look here too at the Flyers scoring by period to see how they fared in the beginning of the game, the middle of the game, and the end of the game. There's a lot of teams that sometimes have bad starts, bad finishes, or bad second periods, and when you can drill down and take a look at these stats, you kind of see where they kind of fall apart. In the first period, the Philadelphia Flyers were outscored by their opponents by a score of 69-61 in first periods. In the second period, they outscored all of their opponents by a 96-87 margin. And in the third period, they outscored their opponents 83-73. So obviously, as the game went on, they seemed to get better, and they scored more of their goals in the second and third periods. When it comes to overtime, they scored 9 goals. They allowed 7 to their opponents. So obviously, they had a lot of games go to overtime, a lot of close games. When the Flyers were involved in 1-goal games, they had a record of 8 wins and 9 losses. So obviously, there's more on the loss side than the win side. That does go to show that if their goaltending and defense was a little bit more solid, that they might not give up those later goals and kind of be able to win those 1-goal games more often. But obviously that's something that the team's going to be working on. So that's your complete stat roundup for the Flyers 17-18 season. So overall, I think there's a lot there to like. They had a pretty successful year, and hopefully some things there they can build on. Now let's jump over and take a look at how their roster will compare this year compared to last year in a segment we call additions and subtractions. Now for the Flyers, there's not really a whole heck of a lot to talk about, so it's going to be a pretty short segment. The main thing that the Flyers did this offseason to add to their roster was they signed free agent forward James Van Riemsdyk. Now, JVR had a career year with the Leafs last year, so if he can continue to put out 30-plus goals for the Flyers, that is going to be huge for them moving forward. Now, obviously, last year they had trouble keeping their goaltenders healthy, so they did bring in Peter Mrazek. They opted not to qualify him, and he's since moved on and signed a contract with the Hurricanes. So, obviously, Mrazek's gone. They brought in JVR. So, this Flyers team is going to be almost exactly the same last year, except for adding JVR to this lineup. So therefore, from an offensive perspective at least, they should be the same, if not better, by adding another 30-goal scorer to that forward group. Now, when you jump over here and take a look at their expected lineup for opening night, obviously in goal, they're likely going to have Brian Elliott and Michael Neuwirth. Obviously, there is potential for rookie Carter Hart to maybe get in there. Wouldn't be completely surprised if he has to spend some time in the American Hockey League. I know Carter Hart's quite eager to get to the NHL, but I also know Ron Hextall's not going to rush him. Obviously, being a former goaltender himself, he understands that better than anybody and how they develop. And I'm pretty sure they're likely going to want him to spend some time with their American Hockey League affiliate before he gets much action in the NHL. However, at this point in time, Elliott and Neuwirth are both free agents next year. So depending on how he does at the American Hockey League level, if he's looking like he's ready, I wouldn't be surprised to see him get a shot as early as next year. But depending on injuries like they ran into last year, it could be possible that Carter Hart could possibly see some time this year. Your top 6 forward group likely consists of Sean Couturier, Claude Giroux, Jacob Voracek, JVR, Wayne Simmons, Nolan Patrick, and possibly Travis Konechny as well. Obviously, they can't all play in the top 6, so even the third line will have a little bit of a scoring punch. More than likely, the third line will be Jiri Lehtera, probably playing center ice. Your other forwards battling for the bottom 6 positions likely also include Dale Weiss. You got Jiri Lehtera is probably going to be the third line center. You've got Jordan Wheel, Scott Lawton. You've also got Michael Raffel and Oscar Lindblom. So obviously that would round out your 12 forwards. Obviously they have some potential rookies as well who could jump into the mix. I mean, obviously forward Morgan Frost is certainly going to at least get a look here in the preseason and training camp, see how things go. He very well could be another year away from making the jump, but he's looked tremendous in junior, and it is quite possible at least that he at least gets some playing time here early in the season before they have to make a decision to keep him or send him back to junior. On the blue line, obviously, you've got the 2 younger stud defensemen at the top here. You get Ivan Provorov and Shane Gostisbehere. After the 2 young stud defensemen, you get Andrew McDonald, you get Robert Hagg, you get Travis Sanheim, you get Radko Gudas, and you might even get some time this year. Sammy Morin, I fully suspect he'll likely get more of a shot for the 18-19 season. Morin does have a pretty good shot here with the Flyers this year to actually get in more games. I'm not sure if he'll be a regular in the top 6 decor or not, but I do suspect him to get more action for sure, along with other guys, even like Philippe Myers might see some action. You never know this year as well. He may be another year away, but either way, they get some really good, promising young defensemen coming up here to take over from some of the guys in the second and third pair as they become ready for the NHL. So overall, for rookies who can make an impact on this team this year, hard to say if it'll be a full year job or not, but you could possibly see Morgan Frost, you could see Carter Hart, and you could likely see defenseman Samuel Morin all get some playing time this year and have an impact on this Flyers team during the 18-19 season. Now, as far as what to expect from them this year and what my projections are, I do think the Philadelphia Flyers are going to be a very competitive team. If you looked at my prediction series before, where we predicted the standings for all of the 4 divisions here in the NHL, I did put them in 4th place, but I do think that there's going to be a strong battle between that 3rd and 4th positions. I do see them more likely being a playoff team again this year. The main concern for me with the Flyers team, the reason why I don't have them ranked any higher, is goaltending, and to another extent, defense. They have lots of offense. I really like their forward group. They are well stacked in that regard. I expect them to have a really good power play this year, but they do need to make some more strides to improve the penalty kill and improve the backhand a little bit as well. They do have some really good young defenders, obviously on that blue line, but the defensive side of the puck is still being worked on. And like I said before, it would really help this Flyers team go a long ways and really take them up a level if they can get some solid, consistent goaltending. If Brian Elliott can play like he did a few years ago in St. Louis and be absolutely solid for this team, then I would likely project them to be higher up in the standings and definitely be more of a force to be reckoned with. Because overall, like I said, I do have a lot of things that I really like about this Flyers team. I just have a few more concerns here, like I said, with the defense and the goaltending that they need to continue to work on here before they can really take a step up and be a little bit more solid of a Stanley Cup contender. So leave your comments down below. What do you expect out of the Philadelphia Flyers this year? If you're a Flyers fan, are you excited for this team to see what they can accomplish? Are you happy with them adding JVR? I'd love to hear your thoughts for the upcoming 18-19 season. If you're new to the channel here, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, make sure you hit the like button as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.